After Dark on this Tuesday evening. I'm John Fanta. We are joined tonight by Coach Sean Miller as well as Ashton Gibbs, and we have a loaded show with you tonight. The Memphis Tigers facing number 6 out Tide, coming off those wins for Houston and Gonzaga. But in college basketball, expect the unexpected. Right now, Penny Hardaway's team is on the cusp of what would be a much-needed, a critical win for their season. And let's begin right with that. Sean, good evening. It's great to have you with us here tonight. Memphis on the cusp. What are you thinking about the Tigers here this evening?
First of all, you're right around the corner, right? You're in Las Vegas. As I look at you right now, I feel like you're in the neighborhood. Is that right?
I am in the neighborhood. I am in the neighborhood. I got a bottle of wine right to the right of the laptop. I've got my robe here to the left.
Nice.
That will not be on the show tonight. And I'm in Las Vegas. I'm in Sin City, baby.
We'll leave it there. And you do you, all right?
I'm not going to Jeff Goodman's favorite spot, the Spearmint Rhino. I am not going to Goodman's favorite hangout.
Good to hear. Yeah, I think from my perspective, I follow Alabama quite a bit. I'm fan of the way they play and Nate Oates, but it's kind of the perfect storm here tonight. You have one team. Think about what Alabama's done. They fly all the way across the country and play Gonzaga in Seattle, and they beat them in Seattle and fly all the way home. Both the trip out and the trip back, it's not an easy thing to manage. And then the next big test for them, they play arguably one of the more difficult teams to play against, Houston. And if you watch that game and you have a definition of a rock fight in college basketball, that was it. I mean, it was as hard of a game, emotionally charged, both teams, both really good teams. And now they win again. And now it's almost like now you're going to go, and I'm sure those guys are getting ready for final exams, up to Memphis. And, oh, by the way, they've lost 4 in a row. They're desperate. It's like, this is it. This is the game for them. And by the way, Memphis is talented. So, it's just, to me, Alabama didn't look like they had the juice that they normally do. And credit Memphis, they played up to their talent level. And as I think we all are well aware, they have a few guys that can really, really play. And John, the last part I would say is young players hit their strides at different points. Don't be surprised if this isn't a game that really spurs on a guy like, Jalen to really put it all together and never look back. So I think a meeting of two different things, which heavily favored Memphis unless something crazy happens here at the end.
I think
Ashton, your thoughts on the – go ahead.
So finally we get it from Memphis. Obviously tons of potential. Great young guys. You talk about Jalen, Duren, Amani Bates. I think the biggest, turnaround was Amani not playing as much point guard tonight, and kind of put him off the ball a bit. Started him on the ball, but I think his biggest thing is just going to be decision making. Memphis is just turning the ball over. I think in the beginning of the season, that's been their Achilles heel. And, against a tough Alabama team with these type of guards, they really kept the game under control, made good decisions, and probably going to end up in a win.
Yeah, this is huge for Memphis. They had to have this game.
Yeah.
You have to have a moment. I know it's against the number 6 team in the country, but it felt like either now or never. You're going to figure this out, or it's never going to happen. And look, what we can say about Penny Hardaway's groups is that they defend, and they've done a real nice job tonight against Alabama. Alabama 10 for 30 from beyond the arc. And look, they've held Jaden Shackelford and Javon Quinterly to a combined 8 for 21 from the field. I think that's the head of the snake for Alabama. No question, though. Timing's everything. And you know that, Sean, the ups and downs of a season. Alabama's coming off such a high. You come into this hostile atmosphere. Memphis fans are so good. But what I look at here tonight is 19 assists on 31 field goals. Like, Memphis has found some ball movement. Landers Nolly, by default, has to be a guy that makes some plays for others, and he has tonight.
Yeah, you hit on defense. And, remember the one thing about basketball, the offense is connected to defense and vice versa, right? Your defense is connected to offense. If you're a team like Ashton mentioned that struggles taking care of the ball, you have live ball turnovers, which are steals by the other team, and your decision-making plagues you offensively. I mean, you could have a great scheme, a talented group, and a team that's willing to defend, but you can't defend 2-on-1s, wide open threes, and the things that happen when you turn the ball over. And I think the first start towards Memphis's rise is chip away at the turnover problem. You're not going to go from bad to great, but bad to fair, and just, fair creeps into good. And before you know it, I think as they start taking care of the ball better, less turnovers, more shots at the basket, guess what? Their strength will be really amplified. And that is, they're going to play 5-on-5 more defensively, and they're going to be a very difficult team to score against. If you can defend Alabama like they have tonight, you can defend any team on your schedule.
Yeah, I think also their sense of urgency, they just seemed seemed a bit more confident, but I think they played a lot harder today. Possession by possession, you could tell they were really locked in, especially defensively, securing rebounds, keeping guys in front of you, especially playing against a tough Alabama team when you have guards that can create, get in the lane at will. I thought Memphis did a really good job of keeping guys in front, securing rebounds, and then making good decisions on offense.
Jalen Duren, 14 points, 7 of 9 from the field, 6 rebounds. Sean, what makes Jalen Duren a potential lottery pick?
Number one is this, John. He just kind of has to unpack his bags, put the key in the door, and focus on what do I have to do to be the best basketball player here at Memphis. What is it that I need to work on to make my team better? So much pressure is on these young guys like Jalen before they ever enter school. It's almost as if it's an inconvenience to be there. And I don't mean that at all towards Jalen's attitude, but it's a hard narrative for an 18-year-old to overcome when the only thing that people want to talk to you about is, what pick are you going to be? And it's predetermined they're going to leave. If you predetermine a one and done, in a sense, you're going to be at school for about 6.5 months. And I think what allows those guys to be the best they can be, which also allows them to be the highest pick that they deserve to be, is by their performance in the 1 year that they're in college. And if Jalen continues to develop and continues to listen to, Penny and Rasheed Wallace and Larry Brown, and gets better as a defensive player and just keeps practicing and working and working and working and putting his time in, those other things will take care of themselves. And, Amani Bates, I'm sure, is dealing with the same thing. In Amani's case, he reclassified. I think Jalen did in a way too. I mean, you're talking about guys that could be seniors in high school being judged in December of their freshman year in college. I mean, about a decade ago, in December of your first year in college, you were just trying to figure out what school felt like. And I think that's the hardest part sometimes for those younger guys. But tonight could be a real big step. It's a confidence booster, and they did it on a big stage.
I think just using his physical prowess. At the end of the day, he's a young guy, freshman, and the better he is around the basket, finishing with both hands, I think the better he'll be. But like Coach said, really taking it one day at a time and just chopping wood and just getting better and winning. I think that's the biggest difference, coming from high school to college, is more about just winning, making winning plays, not only on the offensive end, but defensively as well. And I think if he really attributes to that and really locks in on that, he'll be fine.
Sean, I think it's so interesting as Memphis is wrapping it up. Now they're dribbling it out. A 92-78 win at the FedEx Forum, and a reinvigorating night for Memphis basketball to go to 6-4. They get it done, and that's a huge win for their resume. But Sean, you brought up the fact of focus. And for an 18-year-old kid, there's so much going on. But then again, he's got to be in your gym every day for 3 hours, if not more. There's class, but there's the circle of people. There's all this stuff going on around him. So as a coach, if you're in the role of Penny Hardaway and his assistants, take me through as a head coach of a one-and-done player, what the process is of day by day, keeping someone focused, helping them get better, but living in the moment.
Well, all those conversations have to happen before they ever come to the school that they choose. The tone is set, the expectations are set. And, Ashton mentioned it. You can't skip what's the most important for everybody, including the coach, which is winning. And if you look at recent history, teams that go deep in the NCAA tournament, that have those magical 30-win seasons, players on those teams get the benefit of the doubt. They're not necessarily players that are averaging 22 points and 10 rebounds or, had 40-point performances throughout the year. They're consistent players on really, really good teams. Winning takes care of it. And, my motto with our guys constantly, and you couldn't say it enough just to reinforce it, with team success comes all of the individual accolades for all of us. But those individual accolades are much more harder to come by when the team that you're playing on is mediocre. And, so that's what leads you to practice and lifting weights, being on time and playing within a system. The other part of it is, John, the biggest adjustment for these guys when they leave college to the NBA is playing with other great players. If you are in college as a guy that's thinking about leaving in 1 year, or in these guys' case where they're definitely going to leave, being able to play in a system and function with other talented players, both on offense and defense, being a winning player, being a player that everybody can point to as, man, it was night and day. When I watched him in November, this is where he was as a player. Now look at him here in February. So all of those things, those tangible things, become even more important when they leave college and become a part of the NBA. And I'm sure when you look at the staff at Memphis, their pedigree and them being in the NBA as a coach and player, all those, I'm sure, lessons are being talked about right now. But the switch doesn't always come on game one. This game right here could propel Memphis. They lost 4 in a row before this game. I think they have Tennessee next. Don't be surprised if they don't win 10 of their next 12 or 12 of their next 14. It can happen.
I agree, Coach. And I think the winning traits have to carry. And then also just learning scouts. I think that's one of the biggest differences going from high school to college also is scouting reports depending on who you play, especially in conference when you have so many different type of styles and systems that different teams run. So not only for Jalen, but Amani Bates, as he's playing this point guard position, that he's going to see different schemes, whether it's off of ball screens, whether it's off of dribble handoffs, pin downs, whatever the case may be. He'll see different systems, different defensive schemes, and they have to really adjust to it.
Ashton, when you were at Pitt, do you remember a game that you played that might have changed an entire season? Like one night that just swung it into a different direction?
Well, individually, my freshman year, we're in conference and we're playing against Notre Dame my freshman year. And it was just one of those hot nights for me. And I think just as a freshman, you need one of those games just to build confidence, especially against a conference foe. They were really good at that time. They came into the Pitt, and it was just one of those days where guys were finding me. I was moving without the ball, and it kind of led to my surgence from there, just my confidence overall. So one game could take you and it could catapult you individually and then collectively as a team also.
I thought you were going to talk about the Sweet 16 win that let you get to the Elite Eight to play Villanova. One of the luckiest wins in history.
I didn't want to bring it up.
Yeah. If Derek Brown didn't step on the end line, I still haven't forgiven him to this day for no reason. That might have ended your freshman year right there.
Yeah, you guys were tough, man.
Yeah, so are you.
What was your scout? I mean, what was your scout on Ashton?
Knockdown shooter, a smart player, a guy that makes other people better. And but a great example of John on a serious note of what you're talking about. Ashton at that point, think about it. He's in his first year. He's in the Sweet 16. He's a piece to a puzzle. He's playing on the number 1 seed in the NCAA tournament. That's his team, DeJuan Blair and guys all over the court that could play. They're trying to get to the Final Four. And you know what? Isn't it funny? A lot of years have gone by since that game, yet he can remember that game almost like it was yesterday, and so can I. And that's why with team success comes those individual accolades. And, you know, your fondest memories, I think, always accompany a big moment, a big game. And these young players, sometimes it takes them a little bit of time to acclimate into the importance of winning in college basketball. You'll see the criticism tonight for Memphis's team will disappear. It'll be filled with accolades, and it'll be a great opportunity for Memphis's staff to say, you see what happens when you win. We all get respect. Yeah. And, you know, in some ways, I'm sure there's some guys tonight on Memphis's team that played a very typical game like they have played. What's the difference? You beat Alabama. And I think that as you learn what comes with that winning, a lot of other good habits follow.
All right, last thing here on Memphis. Do you buy Memphis being a team that in March is hearing their name on Selection Sunday?
I'm going to pass on that one. I won't sell them yet, but when you turn the ball over like they have, it's almost an incurable disease. You know, you can maybe have a good day once in a while, but I think until they prove over long stretches that turnover problems have gotten a lot better, and that's in their rearview mirror, it's tough to really trust that they're going to be able to do it. If they could, though, fix that right there, then some of their strengths, like their length and their defense that showed tonight, it will be amplified.
I'll probably pass on it as well. Only reason, if they put Amani Bates off of the ball as a secondary ball handler, I actually think they skyrocket. I think he's a really good guy that can get downhill, make plays for himself, make plays for others as a secondary guy. And I think that can really change their turnover issues, to be honest with you. But they have a good team. They have the talent. Overall, it's still early in a sense. So, but I'm gonna pass just to see if he does well as a secondary ball handler. I think that's where Memphis will skyrocket.
Couldn't agree with you guys more. When you don't have a primary ball handler from game to game that can make plays for others, and that's the key missing piece, I mean, that should be at the top of Memphis's Christmas list. No question about it. Because if you have that in place, it changes everything. But the other aspect of it is the Tigers don't play in a strong enough league in which if you take a bad loss or two because of a turnover problem, it's going to be hard to make up for that.
Plus, like we've talked about, John, over the last month, November and December, it's not a warm-up time for college basketball. These non-conference opportunities on neutral courts, you know, exempt tournaments, big games like tonight, home court playing an SEC team, you get one shot at it. And sometimes when you get towards Christmas and you haven't been able to attain that success, it's just difficult. You know, it's almost like the train left the tracks. And unless you win the conference tournament, it's not in the cards.
Well, a team that has not needed any time to warm up or ease into things is one of the surprises, not only in the Big East Conference, but nationally. I'm talking about the 10-1 Providence Friars, off to a 10-1 start for just the second time in the Ed Cooley era. That has spanned 11 years. And what Cooley has done to turn around Providence basketball and ascend this program is one of the best coaching jobs in this sport. And this season has been a big bounce back year. And we have an exclusive tonight with the Friars lead man who has a big time game on Saturday evening at the XL Center in Hartford that we will get to when the Providence Friars take on the UConn Huskies. Our After Dark exclusive, the full thing, which will be put to YouTube. But first, a nice clipping here with Sean Miller and Ed Cooley, a great Coach's Corner.
Ed Cooley, it's Sean Miller. It's great to see you, my man. When you live in the Southwest and you live in the Northeast, it's not every day that we can visit. So it's great to have you on, man.
Thanks a lot for having me, Sean. It's great to see you. Great to spend some time together.
I'm a member of the media, man. So just try to see me for what I once was. All right. Hey, listen. I want to talk about a number of things, and obviously you and I are good friends, but I know you got a big game coming up this weekend. And, I was thinking about it, Ed. When I think of the Big East, I go back to the days when I played because I never really coached in it.
Right.
And, man, Providence and UConn, it just has to feel good for New England, even for you, just to have a game against UConn that represents the Big East again. Being able to play them home and away, like it almost has to feel right. Am I correct on that?
You are. It's a natural rivalry. It's one of the founding schools in the Big East, way back when Dave Gabbitt's vision came to, and obviously at the pinnacle with Patrick Ewing and Chris Mullen. They're synonymous with the Big East. I mean, I know you remember playing at Fitzgerald Fieldhouse, right, at Pitt, and getting run over by the Georgetown guys.
Yeah. No, I ran. They couldn't catch me, man. I wanted no part of that.
But it's I mean, obviously they're a monster. They, what Danny's doing down there right now, and what he's been able to revitalize the program, and they're very talented, very tough. We're going to walk into a buzzsaw, and our players are excited. I'm pretty sure his players are excited. So natural rivalry. We'll see what happens.
Back in the day when Calhoun was at UConn and we would go up there, I think it was called the Hartford Civic Center, and I'll never forget. It was attached to the hotel. You went from kind of like your room, and you're able to walk into the arena, and that's when I really understood the pageantry and the love for college basketball in New England, because obviously your home court speaks for itself as well. But I mean, the fans at that game and in that arena were ratcheted up. I mean, you knew you were in for a fight. And I can imagine this being kind of the new beginning for the Big East with you two guys, that would be one heck of an atmosphere on Saturday.
Yeah, we're expecting a sellout crowd there at the XL Center, they call it now. I believe we were their last Big East game in 2013 at Gample prior to the split. And we will be their first Big East game in front of fans, because last year, their first year, was a COVID year without fans. So it is going to be a great game, great atmosphere. It'll be great, televised on Fox, National Fox at 5 p.m. It should be an exciting time. And I just hope the Friars could be mentally, physically, and emotionally tough.
You'll be ready. And I'm going to tell you this, when I'm laying on my couch, you'll have my undivided support.
Call a timeout for me. Call a timeout.
Let me tell you something. The sweat you'll be dealing with will be much different than the sweat I'm dealing with. Trust me, there's a big difference, brother. Hey, listen, Ed, I watch you guys. You're off to a 10-1 start, and try to follow you religiously. What I love about your team, and I like just to kind of talk to you about this, it seems like you're equally balanced. Like your defense and offense, are about equal in terms of performance, and the one thing, like statistically, your teams always do a good job, especially when they're really good, getting to the free throw line. You're top 10 in the country right now in free throw attempts. And I just, for me, like watching all these games, right? I don't have my team anymore. So you're fixated on Providence. I kind of see the whole. It's amazing with today's world of college basketball. Like, there's so many flows and 4 out, 1 in, that there are a lot of teams that don't get to the foul line.
Mhm.
And I think, man, there's not a bigger stat towards winning than if you can get there, get their team in foul trouble, convert when you get there. You know, it just has such great meaning towards winning. And I just wanted to ask you about that because I've always felt like playing against you, watching you, that's always been an emphasis for you on offense.
It's one of our key components we really talk about is our goal every game is to make more than the other team attempts.
Yeah.
I feel that stat line goes a long, long way because you can control the game if you're getting fouled. You're
Yeah.
controlling the game if you can play inside out. You know,
Yeah.
can you touch the paint on multiple efforts in one possession, whether it's a hand check, whether it's a bump, whether it's throwing the ball to the post, whether it's a dive to the basket off of our progression cuts, as you know,
Yeah.
what can we get at the basket to play inside out? And if we could make more than you attempt, we're going to put ourselves in a good situation to have success.
You can catch that full conversation on the Field of 68 YouTube channel to come between Sean Miller and Ed Cooley. It ran about a half hour. Really fun listen. Sean, your biggest takeaways from talking with the head coach of the Providence Friars?
Well, I know Ed well. He's a great friend of mine. And, you know, I think the thing that always sticks out about him is just his big personality that can make everybody smile. And I think from a coaching perspective can really bring out the best in young people and the team that he coaches. And he's off to a great start. The game this weekend, UConn, welcoming them back in the Big East. I know it's a huge game in New England. It'll be a big game for both teams. It's Big East play and just feels right. You know, me being way out here, played in the Big East a billion years ago. It's kind of how it used to be and it's returned. So credit to the Big East and should be a great game.
Yeah, Coach Cooley, the ultimate players coach, it seems like. And his players just feed off of his passion and his love for the game. That's what it seems like. I think they have a really good squad, but he gets his players to play hard. They play really hard. That's the first thing I think of when I think of Providence is possession by possession, how hard and tough they play, and that passion that Coach Cooley has, you know, the players definitely feed off of it. So it'll be a great game this weekend against UConn, and I'm definitely looking forward to it.
Two really difficult places to play too. Ed and I talked about it on that interview. I don't know if that showed up, but you know, you play UConn, whether it be I call it the Hartford Civic Center. I know it has a different name now, or on campus there at Gamble. I mean, you're catching a passionate fan base, a live crowd, and a hard playing group. Ditto for Providence, right? You go to the Dunkin' Donuts Center and, you know, you play in front of that crowd. It's not an easy place to play for a visitor. And, you know, Ashton, I'm sure you could speak to that. I mean, you're the visiting team going to either one of those two places. You get off the bus knowing that tonight's going to be hard.
It starts in warm-ups, man. The fans in both arenas. We were actually number one in the country. We went to Dunkin' Donuts Arena and lost. They stormed the court, but the atmosphere was absolutely crazy. It was unbelievable. And those guys feed off of the atmosphere. That's the biggest thing. So, and then UConn is UConn. You know, pedigree, the history, the talent of players. You know, it's all elite, top notch.
Yeah. Yeah, and they're going to be good. You know, I'm looking at the stats and just talking to Ed a little bit. You know, Providence does a great job of getting to the foul line. They're top 10 in the country in free throw attempts per game, which is a great stat. Defensively, Providence does a really good job of being hard to score against inside the arc, like around the rim. So far, you know, their defense has shined. They don't foul a lot, and they're hard to score against from two. You look at UConn, like they have the same characteristics, except They might even be more elite with their shot blocking. They foul more, but they're tough to score against inside the arc. They play very, very hard. They get fouled a lot. So you go to that game now, whoever shoots and makes more free throws, that's a big stat in that game.
That's a game where the three officials have a really interesting duty because it's going to be played like the year's 1988. Will they allow it to be played that way is a different question. It should be an absolute war there on Saturday. And I think that it bears noting here for just a final thought on Providence basketball. Like, people don't fully understand. Ed Cooley came from nothing. He grew up in a broken home. He's told the story. He's spoken openly about this. They had to rely on heat day to day, boiling water, really meal to meal type of life growing up. He got very emotional earlier this season. I got a chance to talk with him Thanksgiving week. He said he woke up on Thanksgiving morning in his beautiful home in Providence. He just started crying. He started crying because, and his wife said, "Why are you crying?" And he said, "Because I look back and one time we used every drop of water we could have. And now it's a luxury. And it's in Providence, Rhode Island. I mean, he lives about a half hour away from campus. But it's amazing here that this guy grew up in that town. There is not a coach that fits a program in terms of a marriage more than Ed Cooley has fit Providence College. And to see what he's done with this program is truly, truly special. He is the perfect example of what it means to fulfill a dream.
He's great. He's great off the court, on the court. And like we talked about, he can make everybody smile. But what that means to him as a coach is he can really bring out the best in his players and the team that he coaches. You know, Ashton mentioned it. When you think of Providence, you think about a hard playing team that plays together with great effort. You know, that starts at the top with him and his staff. And he has a way of really being that director, you know, of things. But I couldn't agree with you more, John, and he deserves tremendous credit because his success at Providence as well, on the court, getting to the NCAA tournament, and being able to do it over a long period of time is something that has not been done. And it certainly hasn't been done in a way that Ed has done it.
Yeah, being humble and that humility always resonates with players, especially when you have guys that don't come from much as well. I think Coach Cooley does a great job of just connecting with guys. I've actually had the chance to know him. He recruited my younger brother a bit. So he just his day-to-day, he just genuine spirit, pure spirit, and that resonates with your players. They want to play hard for you and go out there and, you know, win as many games, not only for themselves, but for the coaching staff as well.
All right. We've got a little less than a half hour to go here on Field of 68 After Dark. If you've got a question, if you've got a comment, fire away. We'll take it over the next half hour or so. Let's look around the country right here and now. A team outside the top 5, the top 8 that we are always talking about. Biggest surprises in the sport, for the better or for worse, the other way, maybe a disappointing surprise. Ashton, I'm going to start with you. Your biggest surprise in college basketball thus far is?
I would say Minnesota. I think Coach Ben Johnson, he's doing a really good job. Jamison Battle is one of their big transfers. And you talk about some big wins that they have. And I don't think too many people expected them to be this good. Losing Marcus Carr as well, they really came out strong. I think overall, Ben Johnson really has his team playing well.
John?
You know, for me, I'll give you 2 different surprises. I think on the, you know, heavyweight side, I don't think you can discount the obvious, which is how can Baylor win the national championship, lose the cast that they had, and be number 1 in the country in mid-December? I mean, it is truly a testament, remarkable testament to Scott Drew and his staff. His staff has been there a long time with him, and just being able to bounce from, and keep this in mind, John, if there was an NCAA tournament a couple years ago when COVID ended it, they were one of the favorites to win it that year. So really the last 3 years, they've kind of been at the throat of the number one seed, being the overall number one team in the country, and really trying to compete for a national championship. What they did to Villanova, and we talked about it earlier today, I've never seen a team that's as respected as Villanova, that's as good as they are, get dismantled by another team's defense like Baylor did to them. I mean, they had 12 field goals in the game. They were 6 for 27 from 2. They shot only 10 free throws. They did not score 40 points in the game. And it wasn't as if they missed a bunch of wide open shots. It was simply like they couldn't get a good shot off. And it's astonishing for me to watch what Baylor has become. And then I think the other team is Iowa State. A lot like Ashton talked about Minnesota. You know, when you inherit a team that had the tough season under COVID, like Iowa State did a year ago, you know, mixing in the right transfers. But TJ, you talk about like Ed Cooley being a good fit at Providence. TJ is a very good fit in Ames, Iowa at Iowa State. Like, to me, they really exemplify each other. I think he's really comfortable there. That's where he's at his best. He's been there as an assistant, I know, on I think 2 different times. So, but think about it. You're 2-22 a year ago. Is that right?
Yeah.
And right now they're 10-0.
10-0. 10-0.
That's his, you know, on one hand you have Baylor, which we just finished talking about. And I think down here you have Iowa State and Minnesota, which are 2 great stories as we approach Christmas.
Hey, grab the popcorn and get ready for Big Monday in the Big 12. That 9 Eastern time slot that they get on ESPN every Monday night, it's envious to the rest of college basketball. And I look at Iowa State, they do not do it pretty.
Yeah.
This has not been glamorous. But Tyrese Hunter, a freshman, over 5 assists per game. Isaiah Brockington, big game, big-time player with the type of skill set that can make things happen. When Iowa State, there's something to be said about a team, and I think for both of you can reflect on this. Like, again, offensively, it's nothing to necessarily write home about. But you can tell when it's a well-coached team, they hit timely shots. They hit timely shots when they need to do so. And the defensive end of the floor, what we've seen them do on defense has been terrific under a first-year head coach with a program that just had 2 wins last season. This is the biggest surprise in college basketball, I would say, in several years. Nobody in their right mind would have predicted Iowa State to be 10-0. Even the biggest Cyclones fan out there in the wonderful town of Ames, which you walk into Hilton and good golly, it's kind of like a cult following.
Great home court. Yeah, great home court.
It's a great crowd.
Yeah. But no, I couldn't agree with you more. And, you know, on the heels of that too, John, when you talk about who's the best conference in college basketball, I don't think that's really up for debate or even close. The Big 12 from top to bottom stands alone. You know, right now, going into tonight, they have won as a conference 85% of their games. 85%. We're just a couple weeks away from conference play beginning all across the country. I mean, that's winning almost 9 out of every 10 games that they've played. And it's just the top to bottom strength, with the top being Baylor and Kansas. And then, you know, obviously Texas, you think about what they're going to become as the season keeps unfolding. It is an amazing conference.
I think it's loaded with talent. I think it's loaded with high-level coaches as well. Like you said, Baylor, Kansas, Texas, the talent level. I just thinking about the Seton Hall and Texas game, the talent level that Texas had. When you talk about Trey Mitchell, one of the best players in the A-10, you got Marcus Carr, one of the best players in the country, number 1 grad transfer in the country. That Big 12, just the talent level combined with great coaching, it's going to be a great season. It's going to be a great conference season. I think the conference tournament, and I'm just looking forward to seeing who actually gets in as well from the Big 12.
They're going to get a ton of bids, Ashton. You know, it's just, I hate to talk about it as much as we are in December, but, you know, look, November and December, it's the foundation for how many bids a conference gets. When you win 85% of your non-conference games and you have a team like Baylor at the top, I mean, by the time they get into the Big 12 tournament, I mean, you're talking about everybody, almost every single team in their conference is going to be vying for a bid. And if I'm wrong, maybe one or two will drop out, but they've all done so many good things here in these first couple of months that it's going to sustain them. It's going to sustain it all the way through.
Truth. You got to make hay, because when conference play starts up, what you don't want to have is situations where you are facing a team that on a given night could pick you off, but their non-conference resume isn't reflective of that. And then you take a loss to them, and it hurts everybody. It hurts everybody. You know,
like tonight, for example, Arizona State taking out Creighton.
Yes.
It punishes the Big East a little bit there, John. The Sun Devils got him.
Yeah. Sun Devils got him. Good win for Bobby Hurley. I'll tell you what, though, I'll flip it. And in the Big East, by the same token, DePaul tonight, trap game at UIC, a game that they should not play. They win. They're 9-1. So no longer, if DePaul picks off, name that Big East school, they're going to win you're going to win a couple conference games. Now you don't have a net of 280.
That's why the Big East is a solid second. They're behind the Big 12. But again, their non-conference performance, they've won 79% of their non-conference games going into tonight. I mean, again, the depth of quality of players and teams, you know, you guys know Seton Hall very well. I mean, what Kevin Willard has done in the season they've had so far, not only with their record, but some of the teams they've beaten to get to that record, that means even more. But the Big East and the Big 12, you know, they stand alone. And then, you know, the Big 10 and SEC are very good conferences, but they just have not performed at the highest level like the Big 12 and the Big East have. And, you know, back to my point about the Pac-12, if you take out UCLA, USC, and Arizona, the rest of the league has a combined non-conference win percentage of 57%.
Yeah.
So again, when you start talking about a fourth team in the Pac-12, it's almost unrealistic at this point unless that team would win the Pac-12 tournament. And, you know, you go, hey, 3 from the Pac-12, where are all those other bids going? It's going to be about the 9th place team in the Big 12, and deservedly so.
Yeah, I mean, if you took out Arizona, UCLA, and USC on the Pac-12, it would be the equivalent of walking into a McDonald's and them saying that they're out of quarter pounders and McChickens.
You know what? I love those guys. I got to spit facts out. I have no comeback. You're right. Now, I also will tell you that based on my own 2 eyes, that if you happen to catch Arizona, UCLA, or USC on a neutral court in March, you better be ready to play, because all 3 of those teams are capable of going deep into the NCAA tournament.
So let's stay with the Wildcats, who beat Illinois on Saturday. And I got to ask you about Benedict Mathurin, who had 30 points. How did you find Ben Mathurin?
You know where Ben almost went to school, John? I would say it'd be like a 51-49 victory that we got Ben. Baylor. Can you imagine that?
Wow.
For the rest of the world, they should be thankful that he didn't go there. But, you know, Ben is one of the youngest players that I've ever coached a year ago. He was 17 years old, just turning 18. You know, right now, if you look at him, he's a very young sophomore. I mean, he's really a freshman in college when you consider how old he is. But he has the ability to shoot the ball in such a, you know how there's a natural stroke for a golfer. You watch a guy kind of swing it and it just looks right. Even when they start playing, without a lot of practices, they just kind of have it. I would say Ben's kind of like that shooting. And as he's worked and as he's grown as a player, he is certainly one of college basketball's best and playing on a really good team. And Tommy Lloyd's doing a great job coaching him as his staff. It's not easy in that transition to get it right when one coach leaves and another comes in, but they really have gotten it right. And, one of the more remarkable stats over the weekend, Illinois made 16 threes. I want you to think about that, like Ashton, how it feels in a game when the other team makes 16 threes. It's hard to beat that team. And I think it really shows the firepower that those guys have right now and the way they're playing offense and the way they stick with it. That was an amazing win. One of the best, I think, of the early season. And I think they have a resiliency and a toughness about them where they're not going to be an easy team to beat.
For sure. I love Ben Mathurin, man. He's one of my favorite players, actually, in college. He can score at all three levels. I just think his toughness and his energy that he brings, even defensively, is contagious with this Arizona group. Yeah. And from top to bottom, they have a bunch of guys that can dribble, pass, and shoot with the best of them. I think that's the biggest thing that I just like about them is almost every guy can make a play for himself or make a play for others. And they do a really good job. Tommy's doing a really good job with them and putting them in a lot of, ball screens, dribble handoff situations, or even ISO situations where they can create for themselves or create for others as well.
If you look on Ken Palm, there's a stat at the end on every team's page, and it's basically average height. And it takes into consideration the 200 minutes that you have in a college basketball game. And, they're looking at who plays those minutes and to determine, kind of the ranking height. Arizona's 2. So think about what you just said. If you have a skilled group like that, and that's really what you said, they have a very skilled team, and they're the second tallest team in college basketball, I think you really have something special. Julius Tabellis, I felt it last year when he was a freshman. He's a hard matchup because in a sense, he's a face-up 4, but he's bigger than you think he is. I mean, he can really punish you around the basket. So, some of the teams that are playing that fluid 4 out, 1 in, Arizona is very creative in using his strengths around the basket. So you're not dealing with just one guy around the basket. You're really dealing with 2 guys throughout the game, and that can really wear the other team down.
I love Tabellis. I love Loco as well. I think just the way he's able to change shots around the basket, he can finish. But I think Tabellis, I saw that Tommy put him in a lot of ISO situations, not a lot, but a few ISO situations around that elbow foul line area for him to create for himself, for him to create for others. And he does a really good job of passing out when 2 guys converge. So
he knows how to play. That's the thing about FIBA, that guys really understand team concepts. Sometimes those guys almost understand the team concept much more than the individual, skill development piece, pivoting, having the proper footwork on every shot you take, et cetera, those things. But the flow of playing the game 5-on-5, they have it. And it's when you coach them, once they get stronger and kind of learn the differences between FIBA and international and college basketball, they really take off. Lauri Markkanen, obviously is immensely talented. If you watched him in November, you saw what he could become. But if you saw him near the end, February, I mean, as he got more accustomed to what life's like around the basket, the physicality, and adjusted, it all came together for him. And, I think last year, a lot of the guys you're seeing, they made a lot of progression. And then, you get rid of COVID and they can have a great off season, a really, really good coach, staff. And, the other part, Ashton, is they have a new beginning. Not only did those guys, everybody deal with COVID and how hard that was in and of itself, but they didn't have the opportunity to play in front of any crowd. They didn't play in the Pac-12 tournament or the NCAA tournament. So you're catching a hungry group of guys right now. In a way, they're kind of taking it out on everybody on all the different things they had to go through a year ago.
Sean, how much have you talked to Tommy Lloyd?
I've talked to him a couple of times. He doesn't need advice from me, and he needs to implement his own program, and I allow him to do that. But I'm cheering for those guys. What's different for me, John, is I was at Arizona for 12 years, and even in our last year, we weren't 8-20. I mean, we had a good team. Time ran out. Keeping in mind James Akinjo was with us as well. So, and Jordan Brown, but they have done in their own right. They don't need me to praise them. They in their own right are playing great basketball. They've already established themselves that they're going to have a great season. Hopefully they'll have continued health, because if they stay healthy, they can beat anybody. And I think the one guy, Kerr Kriisa, that's a little bit different between him and the rest of them is Kerr was only allowed to play 7 games last year. So, I mean, at one point we actually sent him home so that he could play for his home country in a FIBA tournament, right? So you can imagine, like, you saw him every day and you knew, and when you watched him play at the end, he just has a different way, a different speed and skill level. But now that he's full-time and he's able to play from game one and he's a year older, you see what he can do as well. And he's also an exciting player. I love watching him play.
Some great stuff and great perspective on the Wildcats, who are off to such a strong start to the season. And Ben Mathurin, that's such a fascinating storyline. And it is good for the rest of college hoops that he's not a Baylor Bear, because the Baylor Bears don't need any more assistants. And let's turn to them here and get into tip-ins with less than 10 minutes to Ashton. Why are the Bears the best team in America?
Like I was saying, similar to Arizona, they have so many guys that can create off the bounce from top to bottom, and they're athletic. They really guard you. They secure rebounds, and I think I'm a guard guy. So James Akinjo, they have guards that really can create for themselves, create for others, get in the paint at will, and just a winning pedigree. I think Scott Drew does a really good job of getting his guys just to play really hard, but you could tell they take it possession by possession, and they really, really dig into you defensively, and they make good decisions on offense. So a veteran group with big time coaching, that's a great combo in my book.
John, I mean, on the podcast that we did earlier, Arch and I, the Next Play podcast, we broke down Baylor defending Villanova. I would just say I'd encourage you to really watch that, simply because it was a defensive performance that you don't oftentimes see. Like, you could watch games from now all the way through the NCAA tournament. You may not watch one any better than that one right there. I mean, they took a very good, disciplined, well-coached, maybe the top team in the Big East, and they made it almost impossible for them to score 40. And they did it, just with sheer toughness, determination, talent, length around the basket, quickness. And it was really impressive, because when you're that elite defensively, I mean, think about what you can play through. That night when the ball doesn't go in, another night when you have one or two of your guys maybe not at 100%, or maybe somebody misses a game, you can just sustain that winning because your defense travels. It's always going to be there. Always going to be there. And I think Baylor defensively is scary.
Let's turn to our next question. And I have a couple of Pitt Panthers here tonight. And I look at Pitt. It's a 3-7 start to the season. It's 2 1-point losses to Dakota and to Virginia in dramatic fashion. What is wrong with Pittsburgh?
I would say no identity as right now, and it's really tough to form an identity this quick, especially when you have that many guys that have left the program. When you talk about the transfers of Xavier Johnson, Audice Toney, Justin Champagne going to the pros, they're trying to find the identity, and losing Ethiel Horton was very big in terms of perimeter shooting. But, I'm still confident in Coach Capel overall. At the end of the day, you need guys, you need talent. And that's what we talked about with Arizona, with Baylor, all of the top teams in the country. They have talent. And Coach Capel is definitely good enough when it comes to X's and O's. But having that talent is unprecedented and it's tough. So, you guys have to be healthy. You got to have one thing I think that he can actually build on is John Hughley's actually playing really well around the basket, and he can really build on that. And I still think they have a chance. It's tough right now, but I'm definitely rooting for my Pitt Panthers.
I'm rooting for him too. And let me just hit on this. I watched Jeff Capel coach at VCU, coached against him at Oklahoma. He's an excellent coach. What he did at both VCU and Oklahoma speaks for itself. And then on top of it, he was the foundation. I mean, his recruiting ability built a national championship team at Duke. I mean, he's recruited the best players, some of the best that are in the NBA right now. He recruited. I don't know if there was more of a feared recruiter or a more effective and efficient person that could recruit more than Jeff Capel. He inherited a program that was 0-18 in the ACC. Think about that just for a second. 0-18. His starting point is a little different than some other guys that have taken over programs. It takes some time. You then put COVID as a world pandemic on top of inheriting a program that was 0-18. And then a couple things happen. Sometimes a couple things can happen in a good way. When I came to Arizona, when Tim Floyd stepped down as the USC coach in July, we got Derek Williams, Solomon Hill, and Momo Jones. They all came to us in early August. Think about that. That changed the trajectory of a lot of things at Arizona. The ball bounced in our direction. If a couple guys, for whatever reason, it doesn't work out, and they're top players, guys you've invested and got right and brought to your program, and then they leave, on top of that starting point, on top of COVID, and we could just keep going. I don't care who you are. It could be Coach K at the helm in his prime. He's going to be given the time to bring in a real team, depth, talent, making choices, sometimes making a mistake, getting through that mistake and getting it right. But I believe that if he's given that time, I think he will be. Pitt can bounce back. ACC, Big East, Big Ten, I don't think it matters quite as much now as maybe it did 5-10 years ago. I think guys want to go play in a city like Pittsburgh in a winning program in front of a packed house. And I think all that can come, just like it did in football for Pitt, in the next couple of years. I believe that, Ashton. And I gave you kind of a coach's perspective, but, I'm pulling for him. Just watching the fake slide and all the good-natured things that happen with Pitt football and seeing Tony Dorsett and Dan Marino and all those guys embracing the run they had. Same thing can happen with basketball. And I think Jeff will be there when it does happen.
Yeah, I still think the sky's the limit for them, honestly. When I was there, we had a specific identity. We were gritty. We were tough. We wanted to rebound. We wanted to take good shots. And I think as he starts to build that and as he starts to, recruit, as you said, he's a big time recruiter. So he's eventually going to get guys and really establishing that tough, gritty identity that I think the city actually embraces. The Steel City, I think the sky's the limit for Pitt basketball. It's obviously not looking too well right now, but they have the right coach right now with Jeff Capel, and he'll step it up, and the program will be in good hands for sure.
Hey, I'm gonna tell you this too. Now they were a shot away from beating Virginia on the road and beating Minnesota at home. And we talked about Minnesota as one of the great stories of this college basketball season. There's going to be plenty more opportunities in the month of January and February for them to win and prevail, which gives them some momentum. But I want to go back to COVID. Remember, when you have COVID, you're not allowed to evaluate anybody. There are no games to evaluate. You get on no airplanes to bring in the next generation of players. When you inherit a program that's 0-18 and you're trying to build, and then that backdrop happens, I'm just telling you that that's not a fair fight. And I think to judge that in 3.5 years is equally fundamentally unfair.
Without seeing me play a game in person, what would be?
Say that again, John.
If you were judging my game, virtually, you can't see me in person. There's no in-person scouting. What would be your just early first impression review?
Go ahead, Ashton.
I'm gonna leave this to you, Coach. I'm gonna leave it to you.
Well, I'm going to evaluate you kind of on the picture that I'm looking at. I see a young, aspiring star with decisions to be made on where you go from here in Las Vegas. No, it all depends on when I get that picture taken. I'm not even talking about basketball. Where are you going to eat? Where are you going after that? Are you going to bed on time? Will
Right.
you rise early tomorrow morning with the business mindset? Are you going to chop wood? That's my evaluation. That's my pseudo pep talk of be smart, make good decisions tonight. You know, own your behavior.
Own the behavior. Keep the shirt on. Keep the shirt.
I know I'm not judging. All right, be you, but you know, like that. That's my home visit for tonight. We're talking about off the court things. You know, Ed Cooley style.
All right, I'm heading to Chippendales. That's it for on Field After Dark. Happy holidays, everybody. Ashton Gibbs, Sean Miller.
Ashton, great spending some time with you, my man. Great to see
Likewise.
you. Well. Keep things going, man. Proud of you as a fellow Pitt alum.
Likewise, man. I appreciate it. John, thanks a lot, man.
See you, John. Be
Good
safe.
stuff, Ashton. Sean, thank you. Good to see you. I'll be safe, Coach.